Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
As always, guys, check in daily all three channels, Evolutionary, EEARTS, and also Heart's Own. You know, one thing that you might notice going forward, if we go with the flow a little bit more, we've been trying to cover all the bases, but what I find is it's hard to start and stop a little. And so sometimes you might see there's a lot of news and current events coming out, and we'll try to put most of that on Evolutionary. We will cover some things on EEARTS as well. But, you know, as far as going deeper into the mysteries and going into the spiritual side, it's like the energies involved in coming up with what do we need to talk to you guys about, what's really important for this time and what's important for understanding, you know, what's going on behind the scenes. It'll often lead to multiple videos because we'll realize, oh, it's been a long time. We got to cover this. And if we cover that, we should cover this and cover this and cover that. And so a lot of times what happens in this crazy world is we cover the first and forget about the second, third, fourth, and fifth because there's train derailments and fires and this and that going on. And then we get pulled away and it's tough to come back and recenter and get into a different mindset. So what we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk about some of the fun old Mesopotamian creation stories and one in particular. And this right here is what we would call Mesopotamia. As you see, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Gosh, I still remember from, I don't know what year it was of school, the Fertile Crescent, right? The Fertile Crescent. This is the Fertile Crescent. You see the Nile. When the Nile would flood, this area would be so productive and yield, again, so much bounty. Same thing down through here. Interesting to note, you know, the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea, when we get into full glaciation periods, this is all land too, and that's something to realize too, because if we go back about 12,000 years ago, a lot of what is the seas were not seas, as you know, so much of the coastline was substantially farther out than it is now. We are in an interglacial period at the moment. Catalhuyuk, this is such a fascinating area up here. This is Turkey. This is the area where we see so many people did survive massive cataclysms by going into the earth. And you see Jericho, first towns. Jericho is thought to be one of the oldest towns that there is. But the reality is there's actually far older. We just basically have so much that is at the bottom of seas, unfortunately. Catalhuyuk, again, a very ancient place. Now, these might be 10, 11,000 year old towns. But, oh, there's so much more. We were just talking in the last video about over in Indonesia when they went farther and farther down into this pyramidal structure, of which there is, by the way, caverns down in there. Who knows what's inside there? Again, you know, if we were able to truly go underneath the Sphinx and see what was there, you know, because it gets blocked off from view and you're not allowed to see it. It's too much that would let us know that mankind has always been monitored, constantly watched and given a constant narrative. And it would show us that, wow, wait a minute, we've done all this before. It's Groundhog's Day when it comes to, you know, the end of the world as we know it, perhaps even the zombie apocalypse, perhaps, you know, all those things happen just on a consistent cycle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you were to, if they ever let us under the Sphinx, what you really would see is all kinds of different types of beings. Our recorded history is under there. All of the writings, all of the statues, all of the different shapes of us and other entities, rows and rows. I mean, information that would really, it would help us pull together and have a deeper understanding, but it's definitely something that would completely ruin the control matrix.
It would. So right here, this is from the metmuseum.org, and it's authored by Ira Spar, Department of Ancient Near Eastern Art, Metropolitan Museum of Art. I'm just going to read this synopsis that they've created. And again, I don't think we have anything that's in writing that hasn't been distorted in some way. Let me just say that straight off.
Oh, I absolutely agree. When it comes to interpretation, you're either possibly going to be given something false for somebody's own use, or you're going to get information that's translated. And again, dealing with translation, somebody might not see things from the perspective that you do.
So what my intention is, and Cindy hasn't read this, and that's why we were such a good pair together too, because I have read all these things, and I could bring up things and say, before she even reads them, what's your feeling on this? What do you receive? What do the guides say on this and that? And then in this case, I'm going to actually read this, and then we're going to get what, Cindy and the guides say. And don't worry, no pressure, because, no pressure. She's amazing. Okay, stories describing creation are prominent in many cultures around the world. Well, actually, it's globally, everywhere. Mesopotamia's surviving evidence from the 3rd millennium to the end of the 1st millennium BC indicates that although many of the gods were associated with natural forces, no single myth addresses issues of initial creation. I love that person said that. Isn't that nice? It's exactly what we see in the Bible again. Yeah, it's because everything starts, and here already I'm giving you my take even before I even read this. I can't shut up. Sorry, guys. Is because everything really starts in the control matrix that we're in with the arrival of the Anunnaki. That's when everything starts for this time period, for a dark age, because it's all about when the Anunnaki come here. And yeah, if you guys want to use things in a biblical term, you can call the Anunnaki fallen angels. Again, what's an angel? Well, what we view as angels are really those that are in service to the Creator, and those that are not necessarily in physical bodies. They're not in physical bodies. They're not in 3D bodies. They are beings that just basically guide, protect, nurture, and help maintain the original plan of the original Creator. So what we have is beings that the original Greek interpretation is messenger. And again, so many will say, well, those that come from the sky are basically messengers in a way from their parent civilization to us, and the will of those that rule from afar to here. So it's interesting that, again, you have creation myths, but the planet's already here. Yeah, the planet's already here. Okay, so unfortunately, very little survives of Sumerian literature from the 3rd millennium BC. Several fragmentary tablets contain references to a time before the pantheon of the gods, when only the earth, Sumerian Ki, and the heavens, Sumerian An. So An, Ki, right? Heaven and earth, An and Ki. All was dark, there existed neither sunlight nor moonlight. However, the earth was green and water was in the ground, though there was no vegetation. More is known from the Sumerian poems that date to the beginning centuries of the 2nd millennium BC. And with the datings of this too, right away, these datings are definitely trying to make things seem newer too than other datings which are given by many scholars. And if you look to the works of so many people out there, like Graham Hancock and the they will tell you that many of these are much, much later. Just when we look to the Vedas, they're actually, far more ancient too. than what they want you to know and understand. So again, this is coming from the Metropolitan Museum, and this is again part of the control matrix. But still, we will continue. A Sumerian myth known as Gilgamesh and the Netherworld opens with a mythological prologue. It assumes that the gods and the universe already exist, and that once, a long time ago, the heavens and the earth were united, only later to be split apart. Later, humankind was created, and the great gods divided up the job of managing and keeping control over the heavens, the earth, and the netherworld. The origins of the humans are described in another early 2nd millennium Sumerian poem, the Song of Ho. In this myth, as in many other Sumerian stories, the god Enlil is described as the deity who separates the heavens and the earth and creates humankind. Humanity is formed to provide for the gods, a common theme in Mesopotamian literature. In other words, to serve the gods. And we do see that reflected again in the Bible and also in the Quran. In the Quran, again, what's the purpose of humanity? Well, Allah created humanity to serve Him and to praise Him and to worship Him. That's what we get from the Quran, and feel free to correct me. I'm sure there will be those that want to correct the perspective. In the Sumerian poem, The Debate Between Grain and Sheep, the earth first appeared barren, without grain, sheep, or goats. People went naked. They ate grass for nourishment and drank water from ditches. Later, the gods created sheep and grain and gave them to humankind as subsistence. According to the debate between birds and fish, water for human consumption did not exist until Enki, Lord of Wisdom, created the Tigris and the Euphrates and caused water to flow into them from the mountains. He also created the smaller streams and watercourses, established sheepfolds, marshes, and reef beds, filled them with fish and birds. He founded cities and established kingship and rule over foreign countries. In the debate between winter and summer, an unknown Sumerian author explains that summer and winter abundance, spring floods, and fertility are the result of Enlil's copulation with the hills of the earth. Okay, moving on. Another early 2nd millennium Sumerian myth, Enki and the World Order, provides an explanation as to why the world appears organized. Enki decided that the world had to be well managed to avoid chaos. Various gods were thus assigned to management responsibilities. That sounds very corporate. That include overseeing the waters, the crops, the building activities, control of the wildlife, herding of domestic animals, as well as oversight of the heavens and the earth and the activities of women. According to the Sumerian story Enki and Ninmah, the lesser gods, burdened with the toll of creating the earth, complained to Nama, the primeval mother, about their hard work. She in turn roused her son Enki, the god of wisdom, and urged him to create a substitute to free the gods from their toil. Nama then kneaded some clay, placed it in her womb, and gave birth to the first humans. Babylonian poets, like the Sumerian counterparts, had no single explanation for the creation. Diverse stories regarding creation were incorporated into other types of texts. Most prominently, the Babylonian creation story, the Enuma Elish, is a theological legitimization of the rise of Marduk as the supreme god in Babylon, replacing Enlil, the former head of the pantheon. Marduk, a son of Enki. The poem was most likely compiled during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar I in the later 12th century BC, or possibly a short time afterward. At this time, Babylon, after many centuries of rule by foreign Kassite dynasty, achieved political and cultural independence. The poem celebrates the ascendancy of the city and acts as a political tractate, explaining how Babylon came to succeed the older city of Nippur as the center of religious festivals. The poem itself has 1,091 lines, 1,091, written on 7 tablets. It opens with a theogony, the descent of the gods, set in a time frame prior to the creation of the heavens and earth. At that time, the ocean waters called Tiamat and her husband, the freshwater Apsu, mingled, with the result that several gods emerged in pairs. Like boisterous children, the gods produced so much noise that Apsu decided to do away with them. Tiamat, more indulgent than her spouse, urged patience, but Apsu, stirred to action by his vizier, was unmoved. The gods, stunned by the prospect of death, called on the resourceful god Ea to save them. Ea recited a spell that made Apsu sleep. He then killed Apsu and captured Mumu, his vizier. Ea and his wife Damkina then gave birth to the hero Marduk, the tallest and mightiest of the gods. Marduk, given control of the four winds by the sky god Anu, is told to let the winds whirl. Picking up dust, the winds create storms that upset and confound Tiamat. Other gods suddenly appear and complain that they too cannot sleep because of the hurricane winds. They urge Tiamat to do battle against Marduk so they can rest. Tiamat agrees and decides to confront Marduk. She prepares for battle by having the mother goddess create 11 monsters. Tiamat places the monsters in charge of her new spouse, Kingu, who she elevates to rule over all the gods. When Ea hears of the preparations for battle, he seeks advice from his father, Anshar, king of the junior gods. Anshar urges Ea, it's interesting too, Anshar. Where have you heard that word? I'm just going to leave it out there waiting for comments. Urges Ea, and afterwards his brother Anu, to appease the goddess with incantations. Both return frightened and demoralized by their failure. The young warrior god Marduk then volunteers his strength in return for a promise that if victorious he will become the king of the gods. The gods agree, a battle ensues, and Marduk vanquishes Tiamat and Kingu, her host. Marduk then uses Tiamat's carcass for the purpose of creation. He splits her in half like a dried fish and places one part of her on high to become the heavens, the other half to be the earth. As sky is now a watery mass, Marduk stretches her skin to the heavens to prevent the waters from escaping, a motive that explains why there's so little rainfall in southern Iraq. It's not always the case, though. With the sky now in place, Marduk organizes the constellation of the stars. He lays out the calendar by assigning 3 stars to each month, creates his own planet, makes the moon appear, establishes the sun, day, and night from various parts of Tiamat's body. He creates the clouds, winds, mists, mountains, and earth. The myth continues as the gods swear allegiance to the mighty kings and create Babylon and its temples, the Esagila, a home where the gods can rest during their sojourn on earth. The myth conveniently ignores Nippur, the holy city esteemed by both Sumerians and the rulers of the Kassite Babylonia. Babylon has replaced Nippur as the dwelling place of the gods. Meanwhile, Marduk fulfills an earlier promise to provide provisions for the junior gods if he gains victory as their supreme leader. He then creates humans from the blood of Kingu, the slain and rebellious consort of Tiamat. He does this for 2 reasons. First, in order to release the gods from their burdensome menial labors, and second, to provide a continuous source of food and drink to his temples. The gods then celebrate and pronounce Marduk's 50 names, each an aspect of his character and powers. The composition ends by stating that this story and its message, presumably the importance of kingship to maintain of order, should be preserved for future generations and pondered by those that are wise and knowledgeable. It should also be used by parents and teachers to instruct so that the land may flourish and its inhabitants prosper. The short tale Marduk, creator of the world, is another Babylonian narrative that opens with the existence of the sea before any act of creation. First to be created are the cities, Eridu and Babylon, and the temple, Esagil, is founded. Then the earth is created by heaping dirt upon a raft in the primeval waters. Humankind, wild animals, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the marshlands and canebrake vegetation, and domesticated animals follow. Finally, palm groves and forests appear. Just before the composition becomes fragmentary and breaks off, Marduk is said to create the city of Nippur and its temple, the Ikur, and the city of Uruk with its temple Iana. The creation of humankind is a bilingual Sumerian Akkadian story, also referred to in the scholarly literature as Kar 4. This account begins after heaven was separated from earth, and features of the earth such as the Tigris, Euphrates, and canals established. At that time, the god Enlil addresses the gods, asking what should next be accomplished. The answer was to create humans by killing Allah gods and creating humans from their blood. The purpose will be to labor for the gods, maintaining the fields and irrigation works in order to create bountiful harvests, celebrating the gods' rights, and attain wisdom through study. Yes, so all that, what do you want to share, my dear? What pops to mind? What do you want to comment on?
Well, it was a lot of information there, but to me, it just screams about the story that we have in our own Bible. One thing I noticed with these gods here, they really like to talk themselves up. They love to brag about themselves. They like to make themselves sound all powerful, like they're doing this from some inner core of strength, when in all reality, it has to do a lot with technology that they have brought, and the technology is what is allowing them to do these things, and they just make it sound like they're truly magical and special. And you also look at it and you realize how many times you could insert here into the Bible. You know, it's like these beings come together as a collective. They created human beings. And then after that, they got with these very first human beings and created the Bible. Now, how old is this? When I'm looking at things and I watch them date certain things, there is no such thing as time there, and they come up with these really wild assumptions like, 52 trillion billion zillion years ago. I'm not getting that. With these, they feel newer than what we're being told. And this is a cycle, and this is part of our cycle going into the darkness of the Kali Yuga. It's into the darkness, and right now we're starting to wake up and remember who we are. Now, when I go back and look at the very first, what we would perceive to be humans, but the very first beings here on Earth, they're blue. They're very beautiful. They make them sound in here like they're just dumb monkeys. And what an insult. That's just such an insult. But they are very benevolent beings, and they have a lot of grace. Everything they do is just in its utmost natural way of doing things. To drink from a stream or something like that, it's going to look graceful and beautiful. It's not going to look like somebody who's like really awkward and being put in a difficult situation and chose to fend for themselves. No, these beings were very in touch with the earth. Everything they did was natural and beautiful, just as we look at a beautiful lioness. Everything she does, the way she walks, the way she cleans her coat, the way she tends to her babies, it's just very beautiful, and it's very natural. So that's what I see when I look to see the very first beings that were then manipulated at some point by these beings. And also this evolution of change going on. So there's a lot here. It's really difficult to put into 5 minutes and try to help people understand, because when I look at the information, it's coming all at me from different, I see different pictures and different areas. It's like having a million TikTok shorts come at you at one time and then trying to put them in order in a linear fashion so we can understand. I think another thing that humans really, really need, and it's only because of our human nature, is we need to understand the very beginning, and we need to understand the end, beginning to end, because we are linear in nature. So of course we're going to want to have things fit into our realm that way. They have to make sense, and they have to be on time, but it's not like that. So that's what I can share with you. It's something. The creation of this world is very beautiful, benevolent thing where a whole lot of beings that wanted to help did come together with the super consciousness, and all of these other beings being born from that, until when we're going into these dark Kali Yugas, other beings come and take control of that.
So when you talk about blue beings, I immediately think of what we see with Krishna, and because Krishna's got the blue skin, and yeah, and we see depictions not just of Krishna, but there are other beings of that nature. When you also were talking before about some of the first humanoid beings on the planet, you also spoke of fish people, like fish humans, and then we see Owans or Dagon, who end up being kind of worshipped, but yet these are your Lemurian Muins. And so, were they fish? Were they humans? Were they fish humans? What exactly were they? It seems that there's more than one type of being that we're talking about, and they get confused and merged together. So here you see, two beings again. What is this Manny purse thing? I mean, is it a breathing apparatus? What, there's been all different theory. And you see them waving or acknowledging up here somebody that's flying. Again, the wings are a depiction of flying. Flying in the sky, other beings that live in the sea. When we talk about the real Tiamat again, when we talk about the destruction of Tiamat, because even these myths from Sumeria, they're told through whose perspective? The controllers. They're still the controllers' perspective, because again, this is their history they've given us. When you see this asteroid belt, this is where Tiamat, the planet, was. And so when it talks about Earth being created from half of Tiamat, the other half thrown up in the sky, yeah, the Earth is here, the asteroid belt's there, it's up in the sky. And the Earth's position was moved closer in because the Earth has a smaller landmass now than it did as Tiamat. So it needs to be closer to the sun to be in the right proportion for life.
Definitely. I mean, these beings have, they understand where they're supposed to be. So they position themselves in the most advantageous way that allows life to grow. I do believe definitely there are technologies out there that can move planets, but I also believe that these beings that do that understand the nature of the destabilization they could bring by forcing these certain planets somewhere. I do believe our moon, however, I believe that was put into place, not having a super huge impact, but enough to change our minds and change the way we do things. So these planets, very smart. It's like we understand how far away we need to be from the sun. It's like we know what feels comfortable, what feels uncomfortable, and we adjust ourselves as above, so below.
And then when you look at this little blurb, and the creation of humankind, this story, this says, Enlil addressed the gods by asking what should be next accomplished. The answer was create humans by killing the Allah gods and creating humans from their blood. Their purpose will be to labor for gods. So if we, basically change this language to be a little more plain, okay, so what should we do next, guys, now that we are conquering this planet? Well, kill all the advanced species on the planet that are already here, take from their DNA and create a more primitive laborer that doesn't have the ability of these other species have right here on the planet right now, that won't be able to figure out that we're just using them to be our slave labor on the planet, and to still send resources off planet constantly. Because they do. Humans go missing. Millions of humans go missing every single year. How many people are lost? Somebody made a comment talking about people lost in Alaska. How about, because there's an Alaskan triangle. There's many different areas. Many just national parks missing, 411? Mm-hmm. People go missing all the time. Constantly. Some of them don't end up on Earth. They end up in somebody else's fridge, so to speak, or used as a slave in one manner or another. So this right here is telling you this is the second chromosome. This is the genetic manipulation, and they're doing it again. This is what they're doing to Homo sapiens right now. Homo sapiens is too much of a pain in the butt. So what they're going to do is create Homo Borg, and that's really what Elon and all these guys are part of. Got to wipe out this current species, and then the ones that are coming into the smart cities and are going to accept, whatever's given to them, they're going to become part of the Borg. And the thing is, too, though, their offspring, whatever offspring they're going to be able to have or is created, unfortunately, probably will even have more of a memory lapse than we do, and be even more in the dark than we are as to what has really happened. But this is talking about genetic manipulation. The answer was to create humans by killing the Allah gods and creating humans from their blood. So again, whenever they use the term God, you're just talking about a more advanced being, because we were them. That's the whole thing. As we go through these cycles, it's all about the cycle of the yugas. The people on Earth, when you are in their zone of influence, they take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. They do, and it's it's unfortunate, but just know that what you are made of is an absolute threat to them. So many are waking up to their full potential right now. Yes, it's a journey. Yes, it takes years. There's a lot we have to do to really fully awaken. But do not ever underestimate yourself. Don't underestimate what you're energetically capable of doing. I think too many people think that they're just, here to go to work and go home, or do this and do that, and they don't think much about their own ability to throw energy or do things. But when we think thoughts, especially like negative thoughts, those are like little darts going out into the world. And the problem with that is that, yes, they will turn and come back to you. So we all have to be very mindful of each other. And when we don't agree with certain things, separate yourself from that. Don't be hateful, because it's that hate is what is feeding all of the other levels that keep us under control. The belief systems were created as such so that we would turn and choose a side and be angry at each other, again throwing at each other all these little darts, which is keeping us down. It's keeping us from our full potential, because that energy has power. When that's recognized and people understand, wow, I can make a difference outside of my body, then I think that's a time when we're really gonna take root and start to move forward and above and beyond the controllers, because we are already above and beyond them. We just don't believe it. We don't know it.
Yeah, we're way beyond where they are when we are in a golden age. So this is from the Torah, the Torah.com. The B'nai Elohim, the Watchers and the Origins of Evil. The story of divine beings procreating with human women. Yeah. So then we go to the Book of Enoch. 200 watchers fell to earth, took human wives. This is all the Sumerian stories. That's all this is. It's another retelling of all the Sumerian stories. So you might as well, read this. Sure. This doesn't take long. I read this like 40 years ago the first time, maybe even longer. And I've read it many other times since. And it's a rehash. It's not the original, there it is. But at the same time, when we talk about the Watchers, we're really talking about the Anunnaki again. We're really talking about what Cindy calls the fallen Pleiadians, because who are the Anunnaki is the big question. Well, the Anunnaki are Pleiadians, but they're Pleiadians that have fallen to the Borg. So they're Pleiadians under draconian influence.
Mm-hmm. And, it just goes along with the word fallen. Fallen doesn't necessarily mean you fell, but we are down in these bodies that are in a more dense nature. So there's all kinds of different beings. There's a warrior class of beings that I really have a high thoughts for, and then there's other beings that are like a more of a controller class that need to control everything on the outside of them. And to me, that's not in the right direction. We're to be heading up and being more symbiotic, not trying to force things to do things that the way we need to see it done. So there's some evolution that's happening now, and as you can see, the separation of energies is occurring. You might even find yourself not able to be around certain people anymore because if your belief system is changing, your vibration is going up. When your vibration is going up, if it's not going up in those that you are or used to always be around, well, they're going to stay there and you're going to move up and you're going to feel this very distinct separation from them. You're changing your vibration. It's not a bad thing. It's just growth.
So this goes back to the Lyran Wars, and this goes back to, the Draconian Empire. And when we talk about those that come from Nibiru, because again, if we just use the generic term Annunaki, we're talking about those that come from the sky. So it does really change from time to time, as sometimes it's benevolent ones, sometimes it's malevolent ones. It all depends on where we are in the cycle of the yugas. And at the same time, with the beings that we were talking about, they have a reptilian influence. Absolutely, they're conquered, and they've given in. They said yes. They got the ouch. Let's just put it that way. They got the ouch. They're part of the Borg. And so, that is what we are finding ourselves, the situation we're finding ourselves in planet Earth. And yet there are the beings that are much, much higher than them that are wishing to help us as best they can without interference, because, again, they do obey the prime directive. If you look to Star Trek and you see terraforming planets and stuff, that type of thing does absolutely happen on many different levels. When Tiamat was rent asunder and then reformed as Earth, it actually happened much faster than science would tell you. Much, 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 much faster. But then again, it's the intention of the Creator to always provide opportunities for consciousness to have an experience in this 3D, 4D reality. That's why it's here in the first place, because ultimately, yes, we are eternal beings, and yet the Borg, the collective, wants to keep you from exploring all these other densities and trap you with them, because they've willfully given away of their life source essence to this AI system.
Mm-hmm. They're always going to leave the doors of opportunity open to anyone who wants to walk in and follow their program. And we've talked about the certain staples that they use to keep us under their control, but that's something that we have to consciously step back from, consciously separate ourselves from. And this part of things is not easy. I mean, think about a Band-Aid being on your skin for a very long time, and you take that thing off, and oh my gosh, it's going to burn and sting and pull hair. And so, I mean, in life we are going to have things that hurt us when we are separating ourselves from these control grids, because some of our loved ones might choose to stay in the control grid. But we have to be true to ourselves, because that's something that follows you. Wherever you go, there you are. So you have to stay with your heart and soul and mind and keep yourself grounded and centered where you know you belong.
Absolutely. And so, again, this is the power structure that controls the planet, and it's stated clearly in these texts. Of course, it's stated from the side of the victors. And so, it's just really a lot to take in, a lot to realize. And, for some people, it's a little bit too much that they can handle, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's fair, too, because, I mean, they know, the controllers, since they know so much of our makeup, they know how we are controlled. And the belief system, as long as they can control the belief system, they have it made, but we are starting to break out of that understanding. And, you know, for as many people, the Bible helps. Unfortunately, I find it to be the biggest book of spells, because there's things in there that people read and they don't even connect, you know, about killing other people, and it doesn't even sink in. And when it doesn't sink in, that's something that's a spell over you. And that's exactly what it is. But a lot of people are still able to use it to find themselves on the other side, deep into spirituality, and then doing what's best for them. So everything has a purpose.
Yeah. So when we look at all the different species of humans have been on the planet, and we don't even really know even probably 10% of the different ones that have been, because, you know, there's so many different skulls I've looked at that we do have that are not included on this, and they don't seem to update this really. Again, it's because we're getting close to the end game and the big reveal. Really, what you see here is, in so many ways, it's partly a quest for the perfect worker species that will be intelligent enough to keep graduating and operating more and more technical equipment, yet have no free will and no mind of its own. So it's a tricky little thing to try to create, but they're doing their bestest. And, you know, Klaus and Elon and, you know, all the rest of the crew, Gil Bates and all, Soros, you know, we know, you know, this is who they work for. This is who they serve. And it is not humanity's, it's not humanity's ultimate outcome. This is a temporary situation, but we have to be very, very aware and know what we're doing and not give our free will away. So, hey, no, we won't comply.
Hey, no, we won't go.
As always, guys, thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. We couldn't do it without you. Much love. Share these videos. Keep awakening others. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.